All right, all right. Let's do it live. A little quarterback school Monday. What time is it? Morning-ish, wherever you're coming from. A little live. Do it live. We're going to talk Elite 11 recap. Been a few days now, and excited to kind of rehash the experience, share it, open this thing up for questions if you all have questions about what it's like to be there, the competition, the rankings, how it's all sorted out. And just kind of talk through the entire thing. So I'm excited to dive into it. I'm going to try to stay Elite 11 focused here as we start, but if this thing takes us sideways, it takes us sideways. No problem with it. The Elite 11 for me has been a part of my kind of quarterback life for a long time. I was a counselor in the early 2000s when I was coming out. It was probably one of the first experiences where I was ever like, oh yeah, for sure, I can for sure do this at a high level. So it's fun for me to go back and kind of experience it and kind of be part of it from a different lens now as a quote unquote, I hesitate saying coach because I'm not really coaching on the field, but they're called coaches. I do a couple classroom sessions for them and have been fun to kind of go back. This has been year 2 for me going back and kind of being part of it. So really excited to talk through it. There's some really good quarterbacks, man. And it's fun to see the arm talent on some of these young guys who are just thirsting and just starving for as much football information as possible, and to kind of see where they all come in, see how they all, quote unquote, connect for you out there, Yogi, and kind of experience the experience, but also thrive in their opportunities. And there really are a few specific opportunities for them to kind of thrive and showcase their skills throwing the ball. But it's really a hell of a lot more than just about throwing the ball. It is about the entire process of kind of their journey, where they're at, their improvement, but also maximizing those relationships with the people that they will be going through this with as far as their college and professional experience. So really cool to kind of be part of it. If you have questions specifically about the experience, I'm happy to talk about it. In fact, I'm welcoming it. That's why we're doing this. But some of my favorite things about it are just the really the quarterback coaches that are there as resources for these guys. Now, it can be a combination of, yeah, they're quote unquote, you're assigned to them, like you're in their pod for the 7-on-7 element of it, but also just the resources, kind of the overwhelming depth and breadth of knowledge for quarterback specific learning. And I'm talking more throwing wise, kind of on field professional one-on-one coaching, kind of like a golf swing coach that's available to these guys at a high level now. And most of them already use individualized coaching. This is more, in my opinion, it's just my opinion, you take it for what it's worth, some of the best in that regard. And you compound that with some of the resources that are available to these guys now with 3D imaging, with the slow motion video, to really be able to break down and pull apart the biomechanics of their stroke, of their kind of utilizing their toolkit for however their body is comprised to be able to maximize their ability to throw it how they want to throw it as consistently as possible. So really cool to see that. And they get a bunch thrown at them. And it's really kind of an overwhelming amount of information that it's fun to see what resonates, what maybe kind of rolls off their back, what kind of can become part of their process, how they play, and just kind of build those relationships with the same guys that are their coaches here, or probably be their coaches when they're coming out for their draft prep, how those relationships build. And then it's just fun to hang out with these other coaches that are kind of do a little bit, not a little bit, do a lot different than what I do in the space, as far as more kind of, as far as I'm considered, like content creation, film analysis approach versus on the field, one-on-one teaching, tutelage kind of coaching that is much more of what these kind of like quarterback coaches do in their draft prep, in their off-season work. And so it's fun to kind of overhear those conversations, what they're saying, how they're learning, how they're teaching, how they're explaining things, and see how it, how it fits each individual quarterback to improve their game. So I really dig that. The other parts that I really like about the Elite 11 is just seeing people throw side by side. It's one thing to turn on the film at any level and see somebody throw and think, man, that guy's really special, or that's jumps off of his hand, or unbelievable arm talent. It's another to say, hey, here are quote unquote some of the best guys in the country. We're going to put them right next to each other. They're going to throw the same drill to the same spot, and you're going to be able to not even if you're intentionally doing it, but you're going to compare everybody out there because you see them side by side. And so it just makes the comparison thing so borderline effortless. And it's fun to be able to see that in the different strokes. And certainly there's a lot of subjective elements that come into preferences for what it looks like, how the position's played, what quote unquote smooth is. But man, when you see them side by side, you can really kind of, in my opinion, see the cream rise to the top as far as when you see throw after throw after throw, and you see some of these guys just be so precise, and the accuracy and the consistency and the fluidness of their stroke, and kind of, it's just fun and refreshing to see it done at a high level by such young guys. So that part of it, I really enjoyed. The rankings part of it, if you're a fan of this channel, you probably know that the rankings are not for me. It's not my favorite part of it. I don't love sitting around in a room kind of, pulling apart teenagers, throwing, motions, performances, how they interact, how they text, that kind of shit is just not for me. It's hard to say that and then say, hey, the whole point of this is to get to 11, to get to rank. I don't really think that's the whole point of it. I know that's the output that most people see and most people care about. And I think I acknowledge that it's easy for people and people like rankings. It doesn't mean that I like rankings. So that part of it is probably my least favorite part of the whole process. I took part, we'll say, quote unquote, took part in the rankings the first evening, but I really didn't. I was just in the room. I don't have a whole lot to offer. I didn't watch any of their high school tape, and the vast majority of the rankings are based off the high school tape. I will tell you that my own personal opinion is that they pretty much got it right for the most part as far as who's who in the zoo and where they were at the entire week. It's just the ability of what I consider the top tier of guys that came out of this Elite 11. Their ability to spin it and how it comes off their hand and the consistency of it, to me, is borderline effortless. Like, it just makes sense when it comes off of their hand to a couple of these guys that it doesn't to everybody else. It's not that it can't at some point. And you can certainly see how the vast majority of these guys have already worked with professional coaching and are polished to a certain extent that I don't think a lot of guys were a decade ago coming out at this level. But to me, the cream kind of rises to the top when you see guys throw, 2-3 days in a row to be able to say who's who in the zoo as far as the consistency element of throwing the ball. And that's really all it is in these drills where you're in underwear, you're not wearing helmets, you're not really playing with your guys. It's not real football, but the throwing, the arm talent, it's not hard to see. It really isn't. The other part of it, just for me, was it really is kind of a humbling experience when these guys that are probably going to be the guys that you see on Sundays, certainly on Saturdays, at some point potentially on Sundays, are coming up to you saying that, hey man, we really dig the channel, we love what you do, we're part of the Patreon community. Like, stuff like that to me really hits home, and it's fun. I have fun making this content. I really do. It's what I wish existed when I was coming up. But it's another thing sometimes to get out there. And again, this is a sweet spot event for me, right? You're going to have guys who are, it's quarterback specific. It's people who want in-depth, kind of what I consider in-depth, good quarterback, detailed, nuanced content. So they're probably going to gravitate towards my stuff, hopefully. But it's another when they kind of unsolicited will come up and say, hey, just want to introduce myself. Thank you so much for doing what you do. I really enjoy it. I love this. I do this. I mess with your Patreon. All those types of things to me is really cool. So I really, really appreciated those kind of conversations, and is very humbling on a number of different levels, whether it's connecting with the other coaches, connecting with the guys who are going through the program. All those things are really fun for me. The other part about it, just so you understand kind of my role in it, I did 2 classroom sessions, the first day, the second day. It's really, the whole process is less than 48 hours, so it's super condensed, and really probably too condensed if I'm being honest. But my classroom sessions, doing 2 this year, I did 1 the previous year, kind of allow me to kind of slow my roll, and my emphasis specifically is being tasked with kind of talking coverages. And so the first day is kind of an intro, more high school centric. The second day is what I consider a little bit more of a professional approach, maybe a high-level Power 5, what you're going to see on Saturdays at the highest level for different coverage-specific things. And so it's a lot of fun to be able to kind of give them the base work, the groundwork, the scaffolding, to be able to then go in there and really challenge them that second day. And it's a an ability, in my opinion, where hopefully they use my stuff as a resource as they go further down the line to kind of better understand what they'll be seeing at the next level. So that's kind of where I'm at. All right. My guy Michael will jump into the chat here. I'll talk maybe some concerns about the Elite 11 at some point if I don't get prompted. But overall, man, pretty badass experience on a number of different levels. Michael, my man, Monday mornings, appreciate you. Boom. Is it fuzzy, Shane? Let me know. I don't think it should. Hopefully he's not. Robbie Phillips, how was Air Noland? Air Noland is one of those guys to me that is pretty easy to see as far as really talented, super toolsy. I think he's one of those things where, you know, it's not hard to see why, you know, programs like Ohio State hit at quarterback when they're able to get guys who have this kind of ability to come in. You know, it will be interesting to see, you know, how he continues to evolve with what I consider. I can't tell. I'm always a little nervous to say the whole lefty thing because I think there's some sort of like optic prejudice to a lefty, and I don't know what it is. And I think that it makes my evaluation from just seeing him in person, I'm almost hesitant to say it, but man, it jumps out of his hand. I think that there maybe are other guys who are a little bit more consistent with how it comes out of his hand. Now, again, they're just in underwear, essentially, right? Like who, you know, it just throws on air. So you don't really see the playmaker ability. You could see the size, the athleticism, the kind of explosiveness, but you can't really show that stuff off in this kind of environment. And so I think he's at a little bit of a disadvantage with that. But man, the dude can spin it on many different levels, and is going to be one of those cats that hits it from the jump. You know, I imagine him going to hit the ground running as far as what he's going to be able to bring to that Ohio State offense. Zyler Buchanan, who stuck out from a mental processing standpoint? Okay, so Zyler, this is the thing. I wish I was better at making it a little bit more of a ability for me to kind of digest those kinds of questions, because the way that it's structured right now, I did 30 minutes the first day, 40-ish, 45 minutes the second day. You know, it's not really like a round table opportunity where I get to fire them questions. It's more of me as a resource. Hey, this is what we're going to call this. This is what you're going to see at the next level. You know, be ready for this. It's not a whole lot of interactive back and forth. I will say that I give a quiz at the end of the first day, and I consider the first day pretty simple as far as a bare bones kind of coverage, how we're going to classify what we're going to talk about as far as shell maybe and different types of coverages. And I would say of the feedback I got from the 20, only one of those quizzes was what I would say concerning. So the vast majority, 95% of them, nailed it. Now, I asked them not to put their names on it because I don't want to know. I just want to know kind of how well they already kind of have an understanding of coverage. So the vast majority of them go in there with what I would consider a great foundation for understanding it. Now, you can tell that some of them are maybe what I consider like their pops as a head coach, or they've been around it a little bit longer, where they can maybe speak it at a higher level as far as just kind of a better understanding, as opposed to guys maybe who just started playing quarterback or play multiple sports and don't spend all their time. This is all they do. So I think that I'm always hesitant to kind of say, oh, this guy gets it or doesn't get it. I will say the guys who ask questions that I consider like at a high level, like anticipating things they'll see on Saturday, or like how you differentiate this kind of brackets versus this kind of brackets, or this kind of formation cues versus this type of formation cues, you know, those are more in-depth. But the other thing about it, and I'll fairly say this is totally on me, when they're in the classroom settings, they don't have their numbers and names on there. There's 20 guys that I just met, half hour ago. I didn't necessarily know are all 20 of them going into this thing. But overall, I would say that, it's a shockingly good foundation for what they're going to be asked to do at the next level. They've already been prepared for. Boom. CB. What you got? Who do the guys throw to at Elite 11? That's a good question. So I asked the same question. I guess in the past, when it was held at Oregon's campus, they used to fly in everybody, like all the top prospects. I think it felt like they brought in some top guys and then had a bunch of local guys who I would consider good players, but maybe not elite national recruits. There were certainly some national recruits at the wide receiver position. There's a tight end going around. There were a couple dudes that got a lot of notice that were out there on the perimeter making plays over the course of the 3 days. But for the most part, they're really good high school wide receivers that they're throwing to. And the other part about that, now I should preface that by saying, anecdotally, my experience throwing to guys that you just meet is hard as hell. It's really hard. You can pretend to say like, okay, we're going to run a slant. This is going to be your second outside step or 3 steps and run a slant. Well, what's the angle of the slant? Where should I throw this ball? I heard a lot of talking heads. You can't help but overhear conversations because all these quote unquote, gurus and analysts are on the track kind of around the field. And everybody wants to see the arm talent, kind of like the velocity. And I heard a lot of guys like chirping like, oh, this guy doesn't have that gas, or he can't, no easy gas or stuff like that on like slants or comebacks. Like, I want to see it ripped. I can tell you that, coming from a guy who maybe didn't have the greatest arm velocity in the world, and maybe that's why I hedge towards this, but you don't really throw a slant as hard as you can. You don't throw a comeback as hard as you can very often unless you're late on your read. If you're anticipating a comeback, if you're throwing a slant to space and leading him, there's a little bit of a catchable ball. And so guys were like knocking these teenage kids for throwing balls that weren't 99-mile-an-hour fastballs. And I'm like, fellas, they don't even know this guy's name who's running the slant. How do you think they're going to be able to do it? Like, you got to see him come out of it, give him a nice, easy catchable ball right on, that type of thing for me is more impressive than just like, stupid velocity missing by yards, because they just met some guy or never met some guy or have no expectation of what the landmark is in a route. I personally think it's really hard. Now, maybe that's my own issues about playing quarterback, but that was my take on it. Ashley Lewis. Did you get to spend any time around Caleb Williams? I saw he was there, and I know you really like him. Ashley, good question. This is going to touch on a few different things. He was there the first night. The first night I would consider kind of like the lighter workout of the 3 workouts. There's some testing. They do a lot of like motion capture on video, and then there's this rail challenge. And rail challenge to me just means you're throwing that kind of hole shot, cover 2 in the red zone. Caleb Williams was there. Seemed like a super good dude. Can certainly spin it. Super fluid. Ball probably jumps off of his hand more than I would have guessed. When I think back to the previous year with Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, I think of Bryce Young as like super smooth and CJ Stroud as a little bit more of a powerful arm. Caleb Williams is probably somewhere in between both of those, but the ball definitely jumps out of his hand. He's obviously super dynamic. Everything is kind of graceful when he does it as well. So that's kind of how it hit me with watching him throw, but it was nice to see him throw in person. Touches on another thing for me, and again, this is probably tethered to my own experience. The other counselors that were there, good dudes. Jaden Davis, Michael Penix Jr., Tua's brother from Maryland State. Why am I blanking on his first name? Those were the 3 that were like staying there. And I was a little bummed that there weren't more counselors there. I didn't inquire as to, who they invited that wasn't available or said no or stuff like that. Like, I don't know. But I always think that that's kind of a missed opportunity for those college guys to get together and kind of better know that group that will be coming out potentially this next year. And it was, as simple as, hey, what's your NIL deal looking like? What are you getting for this? Those conversations that you just can't have unless you know somebody and are in the same spot. Like, some of my favorite things about this thing is just kind of like the juvenile, shit talking that happens at a dinner table or at a meal that you just can't replicate, on the phone or not knowing somebody or at a combine like this. It's just more relaxed. And I think that whoever, or assuming that college guys said no to that. I'm just bummed for those guys for missing that. I thought the group that was there were really good dudes and seemed like they were locked in and ready to go. I do wish that they somehow tethered their participation into it a little bit more. I know you're there to see the high school guys, and they do the pro day thing, but it would be fun to see those college guys, maybe do a little 7-on-7 or do some sort of incorporate some sort of throwing challenge a little bit more with those cats would be my kind of feedback with that. But just because I remember being a counselor there and doing all the drills and having fun with it, and that being part of the kind of workout experience of what it was like. Oh no, the dumpster fire is still on.
Does the audio sound any better now, or is it totally off? Let me know in the live. I don't want to be doing this with the whole audio jacked up. So do me a favor. Hit me with your favorite emoji if the audio sounds alright. Because if it doesn't, I'll try my best to solve it at some level. But it should be alright. See what the delay is on this live. Tallulah. There you go. Totally off.
Now is it any good? Or you still got the dumpster fire? Oh no. Well, this is turning into a S show, Tricky Tacky Taco. Well, if I just wasted a half hour, I'm going to be pretty bummed out because I don't know if I want to recap this again. I don't really know what else to do other than maybe I could... Oh, way better now? Man, if the audio hurts, man, you guys got to let me know early. I'm out here talking to myself. All right, we'll keep it going then. If it continues to suck for whatever reason, you guys got to let me know, man. Static is tolerable. God damn, what is wrong with the static? I wonder what is happening with the... All right, give me 2 seconds. I'm going to go back. Oh, well. Is it fixed, or can you hear the crackling audio? If you can hear a fire in the background, it's certainly not fixed. But I only got like 10 minutes left anyway, so I might be calling this thing quits. That's a bummer, though. Let me see if I can... Oh, no. I wonder if I... Well, you guys are going to see me fix this thing in real time, which is a bummer because I'm not going to be able to do it justice. All right. Boucher 850 in the house. All right. I see you, Bo. All right. We're just going to go with the crackling thing on eMake. I wonder why it's... maybe if I hit it, maybe it'll go off if I hit it. For some reason, all my little emoji things that I used to dump in here are off, and I can't get it to work, and I haven't gone back. All right, sounds like it may be back. So, any more Elite 11 questions? We'll get through it. I'm going to go through just a quick few things that I maybe, not that they asked me, but if they asked me. Things that I maybe would kind of give feedback wise to think, hey, maybe if this is possible, maybe think about this, maybe think about doing that. So the first part is and I know it's probably a crazy expensive event to run, but it's almost too short. And it's 3 days, but really it's less than 48 hours. And so you just do feel like you're like, everything is like rapid fire, almost like you're going through like like whitewater rafting. Like it just is like every single thing. There's an event. And, you know, even as the counselors, coaches, you know, the guys who go out and play golf, I didn't play golf, but it just felt like there was never like, if you could maybe get an extra day in there to kind of have a little bit more breathing room. And I know that that's probably pretty expensive to do with all the moving parts. It would better serve the experience if we're really trying to connect and form those deep relationships. You know, it's hard to do in 48 hours. That's just being honest. I already talked a little bit about the counselor numbers being disappointed. You know, I would hope that those relationships, oftentimes I'm sure that they pull in, geez Louise, they pull into their alumni for counselors to come back. And for whatever reason, you know, having 3 guys on site felt thin. You know, that's just me. Maybe that's their sweet spot and they prefer it that way. They didn't ask me, of course, but I would imagine that there are more guys that would want to be part of this than were there for whatever reason. Now talking specifically about some of the guys that were there, like the actual playing. You guys are killing me with the sound, bro. Maybe it's killing me. We're going to deal with it, and I'll deal with it later. So I apologize if it's crackling for you. The thing, for actually being in the event and being a high schooler there throwing, I think the thing that maybe people don't talk about or don't warn you about as you get there is when you start, like there's a warm up, you're playing catch, you're throwing, but then you might not throw for a while. And the ability to be warm, like bam, like your first throw, you are hot, full sweat, steaming. That's a learned skill. Like that's a trait. Now, as a backup quarterback in the league, you learn it really quickly that you got to be hot the first second. You don't get a warm-up throw. But if you're the guy in high school, you've probably never been a backup. You've probably never not taken the first rep. So if you have to sit around or, you know, jump in and your first throw is ripping a comeback all the way across the field after you just warmed up, that's a different type of throw than warming up, throwing now screens or hitches. You know, you got to be able to rip it on your first throw. And that is hard to do, but you are being judged constantly. So you can't go out there and roll 4 grounders in the first session and think that it's going to be a good day for you. It's not. And people judge you. I mean, the whole thing is being judged, whether it's subjective argument or not. You're being judged every throw. And so that would be the one thing I would say, like, hey, man, whatever you need to do to make sure that you're ready to go that first throw is really important. And then you go out there and you rip it. There is no kind of hesitation as far as, and this is where I come back to actually playing the game. Sometimes some of these throws you would make on like the pro day, playing the game, it's not as hard as you can. But this isn't a game. This is more of an event. And so you want to rip it as hard as you can. You want to showcase the pop, the arm talent, the whip, all that type of stuff that I think some guys either are naturally better at or understand, and some guys didn't. And maybe we're a little bit careful with kind of their, you know, not wanting to miss and feeling like you're aiming, those types of things that I don't think help you at an event like this. That was it. Trying to think what if there are other things that I wanted to talk about. I don't think so. All right, what else we got? Dan Morgan, I had Saban did a camp with over 1,000 kids for a few hours. Doesn't seem like that would benefit players too much, but they get to say they were there, I guess. Yeah, I feel like the whole camp circuit or that camp space is probably a different conversation. I'm not sure how relevant or beneficial those camps are, you know, especially like the camp invite, because I always joke that like they're given official visits during your camp workout when none of the coaches that are making the actual decision makers are on the field watching the 500 campers that they can't tell apart. I can tell you personally that just watching the Elite 11 guys, 20 guys, it's hard to watch 20 guys, let alone 500. So I don't necessarily quite understand the value of but I also hear stories about guys going on the camp tour and coming back with a bunch of different offers. And if you're a guy who, for whatever reason, hasn't played or doesn't have great film, or maybe we're injured, you know, maybe doing the camp circuit is something that could be very beneficial to you. I don't know. All right, what else we got? The only other thing I was going to say, and again, this speaking more towards me being naive about the space than the reality of the experience, was that for some reason on my Twitter, I must have searched or liked some sort of Elite 11 comment, because all of a sudden I started getting like inundated with all these different rankings of the guys coming out, like of the, day 1, day 2, Elite 11 rankings, and they were all different, and everybody was like, what's going on? How can they be so different? I don't know how they can be so different. To me, it was pretty early right out the gate that Julian Sayin was throwing the ball better than anybody else. That's coming from someone who acknowledged even at the event that he's the only guy I've ever seen play in person. Obviously, I'm going to be a little bit prejudiced towards him because I live in San Diego. He's from down here. He's the only one that I've ever seen throw in person, those types of things. But even that being said, I think it was pretty obvious from the jump, really through the entire experience. I actually left and didn't watch him do 7-on-7. I left halfway through the last day. That he threw it better than anybody else. And I'm talking about precision. I'm talking about the ball coming off of his hand, the consistency of his stroke, even some of the creativity elements of how he was out there playing, just seeming like he was having more fun than everybody else with his confidence of his arm. I can tell you that watching his pro day part of it on day 2, when he did that ridiculous jump throw on the big boy throw, they make you do like the first 4 throws are all spacing. So slant, sit, hitch, swing. So you basically do the progression of spacing. And then the 5th throw is kind of a avoid somebody, get out of the pocket, and throw like a deep flag pylon on the run. And he threw it as a jump throw. And I'm standing there behind him, and I'm like, immediately I'm like, oh, did you just fucking throw a jump throw on that? And then you can see the reaction of everybody who's kind of really knows quarterbacking. Like you're almost like, really? Like once you like, are we trying to win this, or are you just having so much fun, so confident that you just tried to pull off a jump throw on the hardest throw of Elite 11? And that's what he did. And I damn near killed the guy. The guy he was throwing it to had a great camp as well. This big white wide receiver. I have no idea where he's from, but that dude picked up a bunch of offers. But he almost killed him on that. He ran him into a gate. But just the confidence to be able to throw that ball the way that he threw it, I was like, yo, this dude's playing on a different level. And then he went and had finished it off with a bunch of really good throws. But that experience to me was kind of like the defining throw of that camp, even though he missed it. All right, what do we got here? Got a couple minutes here for questions before I go. Got to bounce out. So let's hear what we got. My man Justin, appreciate you having a good throw. No, not the jump, not the Tebow throw. Like on the move, rolling out to your right, jump, and then throw it. Look up the video. It's pretty funny. Dan, good inside, JT. I would say your course represent a better opportunity to get better for young QBs, especially if they can't afford to travel to camps. I appreciate that. Yeah, I mean, here's the other thing about some of the camps. I went to big camps when I was growing up. There are a few things that I got out of those camps, just as far as little drills that I, used for a long time that I don't necessarily use now, but I remember helping me go through it. Just, I think it helps to be exposed to different ways to do it. Now, you don't know what camp you're going to get that from, so it's hard to say, do this camp, do that camp. I would say the camp space has been impacted and probably lost some of its luster because there are so many good quarterback individual coaches that you can now go get private coaching at a high level, high-ish level, damn near anywhere, probably better than what you could get at a massive camp. All right, well, if there are other things that you got questions wise, let me see if I can quickly go through. Other than that, it was one of those experiences that I hopefully think that almost all those guys got something out of, high school guys, and we'll see what it looks like. It'll be fun to watch their kind of trajectory over the next few years, but it's a big boy business when you see all these different media outlets out there on the track. People kind of inquiring, trying to pull at these teenagers, and you just hope that they kind of survive and find their way. DKITT. Hey, JT, I missed the beginning. Did you mention how well attended the camp was with coaches or scouts? I didn't. I don't know if there's like NCAA rule against going to these things. I don't remember seeing a whole lot of college. There must be rules about them not being able to go to these things, because I don't remember seeing like logo scouts there. There were certainly coaches that I know are coaches that are kind of out of it this year that were certainly hanging around and lots of conversations on the side, but I don't remember like seeing like a bunch of logo gear. I also wasn't looking. But I got you. All right, that's a wrap. I certainly appreciate it, and thanks for hanging. If there are things that I missed or you have questions about that I didn't get at, hit me on a bunch of different mediums. Best way to get a hold of me through the YouTube channel and Twitter probably. So I appreciate you all hanging out. Hopefully we solve the audio issues, and I'll see you on the other side. Oh, tomorrow, most likely Bo Nix. I got to finish the video, but leaning towards Bo Nix analysis. So